of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of here and I, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. This our hymn of grateful praise.
Thank you, Sydney. Good morning, everyone. I love it. Thank you. My name is Alan Jenkins, and I serve as president of this Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. Forgive me for checking my notes on the name of the place. Welcome members, friends, and visitors this morning, whether you are in the sanctuary or joining us virtually. Hi, y'all. We are a welcoming congregation, and whether you are in the room or online, you are valued and you are loved. And now for a few important announcements. You can find these and more on the sheet titled Connect at the back of your bulletin. Welcome visitors. If you are visiting us with us this morning, we would love to meet you to share more about the life of this congregation. Visitor cards may be found in the pocket on the back of the chair in front of you. Please feel welcome to fill one out and place it in the offering plate during the service so that we can connect with you. As an aside, please feel free to just walk up and say hey to me too. And thank you for coming. In our community and even in our congregation, there are a number of different viewpoints about vaccines, masking, and even the need for COVID-19 policies in general at this point in our pandemic. As we navigate another COVID wave this summer, please allow me to share with you again the policy our board created to help us all stay safe and, just as importantly, respectful of our differences. Vaccinations and boosters are recommended for all who are eligible. Wearing a mask while indoors is recommended, with masking required for RE. Personal space should be honored. Hybrid options will remain available for worship as well as other church activities. Please stay home if you are feeling unwell. And we remain steadfast in our policy of no shaming of individual choices as we strive to be a welcoming congregation for all. This policy is formally reviewed by our board every 3 months, but it has also been a part of our monthly agenda for some time now. Anytime you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am happy to help and to talk about this further with anyone. Being a good neighbor. All July, we are collecting donations of school supplies for children served by Pazos, our longtime partner in the Latinx community, and students attending Carver Middle School, our new partner in this neighborhood. You can put donations in the boxes under the Social Justice Bulletin Board in the Fellowship Hall. On Sunday, July 31st, after the church service, join us to pack bags with all the school supplies. Thank you all for listening, and above all, thank each and every one of you for making this a place of warmth and welcome. We are glad you're here.
morning. Our reading this morning for Lighting of the Chalice is from E.O. Wilson. We are human in good part because of the particular way that we affiliate with other organisms. They are the matrix in which the human mind originated and is permanently rooted. The truth is that we have never conquered the world, never understood it. We only think we have control. We do not even know why we respond a certain way to other organisms and need them in diverse ways so deeply. The drive for perpetual expansion or personal freedom is basic to the human spirit, but to sustain it, we need the most delicate, knowing stewardship of the living world.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge and wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companion, are we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the light of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are a community. We don't all think alike. We don't all look alike. We don't all act alike. We don't all love alike. But we come together week after week, in person and online, because we are a community trying to support one another. At this time, we share our joys and concerns with our community by placing a stone or shell in the rippling bowl. We know that when we come together as a community and share what is in our hearts, it makes all of us stronger. Please come forward.
The sun at high noon, the stars in dark space, the light of the to the sky. The green glassy blade, the grasshopper's sound, the creatures of shade that live on the ground. The dark soil, the moist soil, where plants spring to birth. We look down and wonder below in the earth. The glad joys that heal, the tears in our eyes, the longings we feel, the light of surprise. Our night dreams, our daydreams, our thoughts raging wide. We live with the whole world of wonder inside. We live with the whole world of wonder inside.
We are a community. We come together to support one another and to live out our dreams. Together, we wrote some words to help us be together. We don't get them right all the time, but we are always striving. Please join me in reading our covenant, which is found printed in your bulletin. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. We are a community, and whether you are here for the first time or have been here for years and years, most of us love one another. And we want to love you too. This is the time in our service when those of us who love people come together and greet one another. It is the time in the service when those of us who prefer to remain quietly seated in a meditative stance should stay right there. But now, let us greet the holy among us. Excuse me, I was busy talking about the trail system over there. At this time, we support the work of this church through an offering. Please give generously. Our Share the Plate this month will be for the voting justice work that this congregation is doing, helping people get registered, letting people know when to vote, how to vote, not how to vote. That's not what I meant, just kidding. Strike that. How to get to the voting. And those kinds of work that is so critical to our mission of democracy. Thank you.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see 'em bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day and the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow are so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? But they're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
This service was designed by Reverend Mark Ward. Mark was to be our speaker this Sunday and also next Sunday. Mark's a great friend of this congregation and the recently retired minister at the UU congregation in Asheville. And earlier this month, Mark died very suddenly, unexpectedly. But he had already given us material for this service and left traces of what he intended to reflect on with us. And so, over the last few weeks, our whole worship team, not just me, not just Ann, but a whole group of us, have collaborated to honor the work Mark had already done on our behalf and to try to follow the trail that he had led for us, what it is that he wanted to share with us in these services. So this Sunday and next, we are following Mark's path and honoring his life and his work by doing so. Mark was important to many of us. Many of us knew him one way or another. And one of those people was Sybil Argentar, our Director of Religious Education. Some of you know that Sybil doesn't live in Spartanburg. She lives near Black Mountain in North Carolina and has been a part of the Asheville community for most of her life. And she was a friend of Mark's. When news of Mark's death reached us, like many of us, Sybil was devastated. And she asked that I share with you today, because she is back in the RE wing with our kids. She asked that I share with you that many months ago, a summer camp for our children was planned. This coming week, in the week between the two services that Mark was to preach, 11 children will meet here every day in our building and on our grounds for a camp focused on environmentalism and ecology, about what those children and their families and all of us can do to make this a more livable world for all beings. And Sybil asked that I share with you how poignant it seems to her that that camp was planned long ago, and that then Mark was scheduled to bookend that camp, and that now we will hold that camp in honor of Mark and his longtime work in Asheville and in his previous career in journalism and in all of his work in ministry to advocate for environmental justice. He was a great champion of our life on earth and trying to make it a viable life. Join me in silence. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. I am no competition for Carolina Wren. But Mark Ward sang only slightly better than I do. I want you to picture This man about twice as tall as I am short, with a gray, scraggly beard, a brilliant mind of reason, and eyes that are just a little bit wild. Imagine this man in our fellowship hall, almost exactly 1 year ago today, standing up in the middle of our fellowship hall with little pods of leaders of our board and our committee on ministry and our committees, all in groups throughout the fellowship hall one Saturday morning, small groups discussing. And suddenly Mark, who's there to facilitate our leadership retreat last summer, stands up and, in what I would call a very good imitation of the ministry of silly walks, begins to stride through our fellowship hall, calling us all back to the larger group. We're all here in small groups, talking with each other, discussing the questions that he has set before us. And he stands up in the middle of it and starts to stride around the room. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. I remember so vividly watching this brilliant man act the fool amidst all of the leaders of our congregation, to call us back to one another, to call us to think together and to work together, to call us to chart a path forward together for the coming church year. We were trying to find our way out of a pandemic that's still not over. And we were trying to pull together masterful work by many groups on governance and social justice, personnel, finance, all kinds of things, to pull it all together into something that would be coherent and workable for the year that lay before us. Many of you were there on that Saturday morning. And Mark, who's been a friend of this congregation for many years, long before my time here with you, was invited to come and facilitate that leadership retreat for us. He met with our then president, Robin Carter, and with me a couple of times, to talk about what the structure of that retreat should be and how it might work, what we might do. And the fundamental that he insisted on, whatever other business we wanted to cover, whatever other work we wanted to do, was that we use an approach called appreciative inquiry. So often, he said, when groups get together to talk about the future, the focus becomes on what doesn't work, what's broken, what are we angry about or sad about or threatening to leave about. We focus on the negative. In no way did Mark intend to ignore our shadows. He was a realist, if nothing else. He knew the importance of clear-sightedness. But he also knew how easily groups, and maybe congregations above all other groups, are prone to swamp themselves with negativity and to never move forward out of anxiety about the past. And so he insisted in the planning that we would use a technique called appreciative inquiry. It's very simple and very beautiful and takes a good facilitator to manage. Because what it asks is for us to think, what in the past have we loved? What in our life together has been truly life-giving? Where have we felt energy, invigoration, even ecstasy? And by sharing those stories with one another, we build a sense of who we have been for each other through time, and of those trends in our life that are resilient and strong and beautiful and full of hope, so that we can build a future with those deep gifts, those beautiful skills. So Mark took us through that weekend. And out of that weekend, he produced a document that only someone with his decades of ministry and work could have produced. So much learning, so much knowledge, such an effort to pare things down to simplicity to be used. And as all good church boards and committees will do, we used some of it last year and some of it we totally forgot about. That's how it works, and he knew that going in. But the experience of using that process that Mark shared with us to focus not to the neglect of the negative, but to focus especially on what can be so good in our life. And that we know can be so good because our history tells us. The stories we swap with each other tell us. That's the proof. That experience of working with Mark's methodology was so strong that the visioning team that is now beginning to organize us to do visioning work for the next couple of years together, to chart a path into the future with each other, to try to have every person connected with this congregation, member, friend, hanger-on, whoever you are, have your voice included. The experience of that method Mark introduced to us, that appreciative inquiry method, was so strong that our visioning team is designing its work around exactly that experience. Mark brought us an experience of each other, of the love and goodness and possibility of our life together, that we will experience again as we move forward with our visioning process with each other. It comes directly from the hand of Mark Ward. When I think of Reverend Mark Ward, think of a man of responsibility and of love. Mark served the Asheville congregation for 16 years. It was his one pastorate. In his previous working life, he had been a scholar and a journalist, and entered into UU ministry mid-career, was called by the UU congregation in Asheville, and served them for more than a decade and a half. My interaction with him developed when I came to work with you. My promise to the board was that as long as I was serving with you, I would enter into the fellowship process of the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is a credentialing process for ministers. And that would entail taking some classes, doing a lot of reading, but it would also require me to do an internship. And in lieu of internship, because I was working here full-time, the fellowship committee allowed me to do a year of supervised ministry, to work here with you, but every week to work with a supervisor, and then to do a series of written reflections on that year of supervised ministry. And Mark offered to serve in that supervisory role. Every week for a year, Mark and I would meet for an hour to talk about you and me and what we were doing. He watched us through my third year here with you. Watched us go through the entire social justice discernment process. It went on for months. Watched that process evolve from trying to find one project we would do together to choosing as a congregation to do 5 projects together. Watched our annual fund campaign. Watched our wrestling with AV tech. And watched as we went barreling straight into COVID. Mark was there in March 2020 when we had to quickly improvise what we were going to do. And every time that I met with him, Mark would ask one question, Socratic question, simple and probing and dogged. Anything we were talking about, any work we were doing, Mark would ask me, why are you doing this? Why? Why are you doing social justice work? Why do you meet for worship every week? Mark, well, it's my job. They won't keep me around if we don't. It's a tradition. People want to be together. Why? Why? Insistent, gentle, clear. Why? In all aspects of the life of our congregation, pushing. Why do you do this? Because his concern was that we be motivated for good reasons. That the work we do be for the deepest and best reasons. Not to do social justice work just because we're angry, or just because we have one partisan affiliation or another. But to do it because we care. Because we care about people. We care about the world. And these may seem like philosophical semantics, but they are not. Choosing to do hard-nosed, difficult work in a world that can be often inhospitable, it matters why you do it. When you encounter people who are opposed to you, how will you treat them? How will you regard them? When people are cruel to you, will you fall into reactivity with those people? Or will you have a bigger view that allows you to respond to them differently? You gather for worship, are you just going through the motions? Are you just singing the songs that you know? Are you just leaning on the readings that are familiar? Are you dictated to by the clock? Are you there because if you don't, you won't meet your budget because you need the offering? All of these things are functional and important and necessary, not without merit, but they're not a reason why. Why gather every week? Why do that? And over again in our conversations, whatever topic we were talking about, I would hear Mark reflect on two fundamental things. There's something that we need to offer the world. We have a responsibility in this world in which we live. And these methods that we use, worship, social justice, budgeting, finance, personnel, RE, they help us meet those responsibilities. Well used, they can be excellent vehicles for doing our work. We do it for love, because we care about people in the world. And that changes how we do these things. Changes how we work through our disagreements. Changes how we work side by side with people with whom we completely disagree to achieve important things, sometimes even remarkable things. Mark exemplified this in his own life. That year that I spent with him, 2019-2020 academic year, was to be his last year of ministry. He was set to retire in the early summer of 2020. And then COVID hit. The retirement party had been planned. And as COVID went on from just a few weeks to a few months into what looked like would at least be a long summer, thank God we did not know. But as it extended, Mark shared with the congregation at Asheville that he would stay on for another year. He would stick it out one more year to help them through what we all hoped and expected would be less than a year. And when it was clear that COVID would last longer than that, he helped them plan for the transition through the pandemic. Mark was smart, hardworking, deeply caring, and famous for hating Zoom. In the last few weeks, I've asked folks who knew him far better than I did. My time with him was too brief. To tell me Mark's stories. Not a few of those stories have come from the pandemic. And many of them have had to do with Mark trying to get his sermon recorded for the week so that it could be edited into a full video for the Sunday service and then shared digitally with the congregation in Asheville. So that congregation's approach was for everyone to record their parts and then for an editor to compile those and publish the composite video every Sunday. More than one story has Mark storming exasperated out of the sanctuary in Asheville, using words even I am afraid to use in this sanctuary. I love the example set for me by my predecessors. Wrestling to make the bleeping thing work. And why? Why? I do sort of wish that I could have been a fly on the wall and said to Mark, why? And it's so clear in his life. And that he wrestled with this stuff every week. It's so clear why. I remember getting on a call with him for one of our weekly meetings as COVID was extending. And he had just been trying to record a sermon which hadn't worked. He was going to have to go back to it after our hour-long meeting on Zoom. He was a nice man, but he was not a happy man that day. He contained it well. It was a great lesson in managing multiple emotions at once. We had a very fruitful meeting. And then he rolled his eyes as he went back into sermon recording. Why? Why do that, Mark? Why fight through all of that? Why not just quit? Responsibility and love. He had a job to do, to help people through more and more uncertain times and the volatility of it all. Remember that year? Remember the pandemic? Remember the financial chaos? Remember the politics? Remember the election? The weight of responsibility to serve. Because he loved those people. Because he cared about them so deeply. When Mark designed this service, he sent a note and asked that we play the song of a Carolina Wren at the start of his meditation. Thank you to the AV team for making that happen today. It is Mark's hand in this space. But he left me with this question, why? Why play the song of a Carolina Wren in this service? The instructions were clear. He obviously had an idea about why to do it. But I don't have his notes. So he sent me on a hunt. Why did he want that bird song played today? Some of you may already know. Many of you, I suspect, can find much better answers than the one that I will offer. I welcome your input when all of this is over. But from what I can tell, from the traces that Mark left, and the reading that I have done trying to follow his trail, the Carolina Wren is a bird that summons us to responsibility and to love. the range of the Carolina wren has been expanding over the last decades. Its name indicates where we associate its presence, North and South Carolina. It's a bird song that we can hear when we walk outside. So beautiful, known for the beauty of its song. But over years, bird counts have charted since the mid-70s. Its expansion up the eastern seaboard, climbing north through the great deciduous forest that covers our entire North American continent on its eastern side, into Vermont, into New York State, until now the Carolina wren can be found in Canada. Which means two things. That it is finding habitable climate further and further north, and that when bitter winters come, the wren has a lot to deal with. Carolina wren is serving as an indicator of our changing world. And there are lots of fights to be had about why the change. But that the change, the wren tells us. And so the wren sings to us about responsibility for our life on this planet and the rapidity with which life is changing. And it is just beautiful. It is a song that calls us to love the bird song and the bird who makes it, to want to hear that song, for it not to go away, and to love the whole world that has conspired for billions of years through multiple mass extinctions and continents rising and falling, through stardust and sea change and sunlight and photosynthesis and evolution, for that bird to form the ability to sing that song, and for it to register in our ears and our hearts, also shaped by that process of evolution over billions of years. Mark named these meditations At Home on Earth. When I got news that he had died, it ripped my heart out that he was planning to speak with us about home on earth. And he was gone. The irony of it is more than I can stand. But what would he want to say to us? This man who wanted to come and talk with us about making a home on this earth. What would he want to say? I think his life shows us. So that even though his physical life has ended, his life, in some way, it still speaks to us. I don't mean in a way, I'm not trying to be elaborate. I'm not trying to make something that's not. But even though he has died, he is still speaking. What is he saying? And I think that what Mark would want to say to us is that our life is not separate from the life of this earth. Humans do not stand outside of the living world. We don't leave our cities and go into the woods. We live in a world that is radically interconnected. The shape of our ears and our emotions responding to the shape of a bird's throat and its call. those things are so connected we cannot even understand it in its fullness. And yet we have built a world in which we act like we can do anything without consequence, in which we act like our responsibility is limited and individual at most. And Mark, in the generosity of his own life, in the brilliance of his reasoning and thought, I think that he would want to say to us, our lives are woven so deeply into this world, there is no separating it. And the choices that we make affect the whole cosmos and come back to affect us as well. We can fight all day long about our different views and disagreements. But this man came to stride among us and to offer us a method of appreciative inquiry, of asking what is deepest and best in our life, and to share stories of that, as I've tried to share stories of his life with you today. This man urges us not to let those things that are negative and divisive in our life together stop us from choosing our responsibility and being motivated by love for every living being that ever was and is and ever will be. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, we're gonna do 188 instead of what's printed. And it's around.
folks. I got a little mixed up there. We are human in good part because of the particular way that we affiliate with other organisms. They are the matrix in which the human mind originated and is permanently rooted. The truth is that we have not conquered the world, never understood it. We only think we have control. We do not even know why we respond a certain way to other organisms and need them in device ways so deeply. The drive for perpetual expansion or personal freedom is basic to the human spirit, but to sustain it, we need the most delicate, knowing stewardship of the living world.
Our lives are very brief and so radically interconnected that they go on and on. Choose responsibility, motivated by love. Ours is no caravan of despair.
We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength.